My name is Margaret Ellison. I'm 51 years old, and 15 years of loyalty just got erased in a single meeting. Ethan Ward's voice sliced through the glass-walled conference room. Your system's obsolete, Maggie. It's time someone modern took over. The others looked away. No one wanted to meet the eyes of a woman being publicly executed. The termination paper slid toward me, his pen still warm from signing it. I smiled, calm and deliberate. But what they didn't know was, the system I built never forgot who owned it. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by someone who smiled to your face while cutting you down behind closed doors. Because this isn't just about a firing. It's about what happens when arrogance meets memory, and when a system learns to defend the woman who built it. When I first joined Orion Data Systems, it wasn't the glass tower it is now. It was a 2-car garage in Fremont, with rain leaking through the roof and a half-broken espresso machine that sputtered like it had asthma. We worked with space heaters and faith. Back then, Robert Kellen wasn't the polished chairman you see on magazine covers. He was just a man in a wrinkled plaid shirt, sleeves rolled up, eyes red from sleepless nights. He had an idea: build a platform that could process terabytes of client data in real time, but no one to build it, and that's where I came in. I still remember that first meeting. The rain drummed on the roof while Robert slid a stack of papers toward me. We can't afford you full-time, Maggie, he said, his voice apologetic, but we'll make it right later. He meant well. I believed him. So I agreed to a consulting contract, under one condition. I'd retain full licensing rights to any system architecture I designed until Orion purchased it outright. He nodded immediately, grateful, almost relieved. I didn't know it then, but that one signature would one day decide everything. For the next few years, my life was a cycle of caffeine, code, and quiet nights lit by the blue glow of a monitor. I designed the framework from the ground up, every module, every dependency, every patch. I named it Halcyon, after the bird that calms the sea. It was supposed to bring order to chaos. I didn't have much of a personal life back then. My friends joked that I had a relationship with my keyboard. They weren't wrong. My parents had passed away, I had no siblings, and the idea of starting a family had long since faded. Orion was my home, the team, my family. There were nights when Robert would fall asleep at his desk, and I'd drape a jacket over his shoulders. Mornings, when we'd laugh over stale donuts, high on the illusion of building something immortal. Those were the good years when the work meant everything, and recognition didn't matter yet. But startups grow like teenagers, fast, awkward, and hungry. The more we succeeded, the less I felt like a person, and more like a machine that produced miracles on demand. When the Series A funding came, Robert's handshake got tighter, his tone more corporate. He replaced my consulting title with chief architect, but quietly forgot the conversation about buying my license. I reminded him once, maybe twice. Each time, he smiled that careful smile people wear when they're about to lie to themselves. It's just paperwork, Maggie. We'll take care of it when the time's right. The time never came. Still, I stayed. Not out of weakness, but because I believed in what we were building. By 2015, Halcyon had become the spine of the company. Every data pipeline, every client dashboard depended on my architecture. If it stopped, the whole system would seize like a car without oil. There was one weekend I'll never forget. We had a catastrophic memory leak during a client demo. It was Saturday night, and the rest of the team had gone home. I stayed up 30 hours straight tracing the bug. My hands shook, my eyes blurred, but when I finally fixed it, I didn't tell anyone. The credit went to the project manager who emailed the client. I swallowed it, but it carved deeper than I thought. Sometimes, late at night, I'd walk through the dark office alone. The hum of the servers sounded almost alive, a low, steady heartbeat. I'd think about how fragile it all was. One wrong hand in the codebase, and it could crumble. That thought scared me enough to take precautions. In 2010, I added a fail-safe routine, a simple line of code that checked whether Orion's license was active every 7 days. If not, it would trigger a countdown, locking key components until verification resumed. It wasn't sabotage, it was protection, a digital signature that said, I was here. I encrypted the documentation and stored it in multiple places, one on Orion's private server, one in my own secure drive, and one on an offline USB locked in my filing cabinet. Robert knew about it. He even called it clever. That word used to mean something kind. Years passed. The company expanded. Orion Data became a darling of the SaaS industry, with Robert in every tech magazine and venture capitalists calling him a visionary. My role, hidden in the background, buried under the buzzwords of a younger, louder generation. I mentored developers who treated me like a relic. I listened to 20-somethings explain modern architecture as if I hadn't invented half the patterns they were quoting from blogs. I kept my cool, corrected them gently, and moved on. Then came Dylan Cho, a quiet, bright-eyed developer fresh out of MIT. He reminded me of myself, back when I still believed talent could outshine politics. I taught him how to read beyond the syntax, to see the logic flow like music. He listened. He respected the code. One evening, as we reviewed a complex database migration, he asked, "Why don't we refactor the whole system into microservices like everyone else?" "Because," I told him, "you don't demolish a bridge that's still holding traffic just to build one with prettier cables." He smiled. "You really believe Halcyon's still the best way forward?" I looked at the code, streaming across the screen. 15 years of my life, condensed into thousands of lines. I don't just believe it. I know it. At that moment, I didn't realize those words would be thrown back at me one day, twisted into ammunition. Everything changed when Ethan Ward arrived. His first day, he strolled through the office like he owned it. Designer shoes, confident smirk, the faint scent of expensive cologne. His handshake lingered half a second too long, assertive, almost invasive. "I've heard a lot about you," he said. "You built the backbone of this company." "I did," I replied. He smiled, tilting his head. "Then I guess it's my job to give it a heart transplant." I laughed politely, not realizing it wasn't a joke. By the time I saw what he was planning, it was too late. But that is for later. Ethan's arrival was like a gust of cold air through a warm room. Within weeks, the rhythm of Orion shifted. The whiteboard meetings got louder, the slides flashier, and the words innovation and modernization became weapons rather than goals. He started with subtle changes, reorganizing teams, renaming legacy modules, rebranding projects I'd nurtured for years. Halcyon became Project Aurora. My architecture, the one I had built line by line, was suddenly referred to as the old core. At first, I tried to play along. I offered documentation, diagrams, even invited Ethan to review the system's design history. He waved me off every time. "We don't need to waste time understanding the past," he said. "We're building the future." The arrogance was almost impressive. Within months, his influence spread. He charmed the board with buzzwords: blockchain integration, decentralized data processing, neural indexing, none of which made operational sense for our clients. But he had a gift. He made nonsense sound visionary. I'd seen his kind before. The ones who mistake vocabulary for intelligence. The tension between us grew like static before a storm. One afternoon, he called a team meeting in the main conference room. Every engineer, every analyst, every intern was there. The air smelled of coffee and anxiety. Ethan stood at the front, sleeves rolled up, pacing like a preacher. "It's time for Orion to evolve," he declared. "We've been running on outdated systems for over a decade. It's time to say goodbye to Halcyon." Some heads turned toward me, others didn't dare. He smiled at me like a man tossing a match into a pool of gasoline. "Maggie," he said sweetly, "you've done remarkable work, keeping us afloat. But legacy systems hold us back. We can't cling to the past." My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Legacy systems are stable because they've survived real-world pressure," I said. "They carry history, not baggage." The room went still. Ethan's smile faltered just a little before he turned to the others. "This is exactly the mindset we need to outgrow," he said. "Sentimental attachment to old code." That phrase, sentimental attachment, stuck like a splinter under my skin. Over the next few weeks, I was excluded from key meetings. My input requests were ignored. When I checked the repository one night, I found something chilling. A new branch of Halcyon's core code had been copied and renamed Aurora Engine. The author tag? Ethan Ward. He had cloned my framework, changed a few variable names, and was calling it the future. I confronted him in his office the next morning. "You copied my architecture," I said. He leaned back in his chair, smug and calm. "Copied?" "No, Maggie," I iterated. "That's what progress looks like." "That's theft," I said quietly. He grinned. "Then maybe you shouldn't have left your masterpiece lying around in plain sight." For a moment, I saw something flash behind his eyes, not brilliance, but fear. The kind of fear that comes from knowing you've overplayed your hand. I left without another word. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the rain hammering against the window. The city lights blurred through the drops like broken circuits. I opened my laptop and stared at Halcyon's source code. The fail-safe routine blinked at the bottom of the screen, my quiet guardian. Every 7 days, it verified Orion's license. Every 7 days, it reminded the company who truly owned the foundation. I didn't touch a line of code. I didn't have to. Still, part of me hoped Ethan would back off, that he'd realize what he was doing wasn't just unethical, it was dangerous. But hubris has no brakes. A week later, Dylan knocked on my office door. He looked pale, nervous. "Maggie," he whispered. "Ethan deleted all the old backups. He said they're unnecessary for the new Aurora system." My stomach turned cold. "All of them?" "Yeah, even the off-site archives." I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment. "He's rewriting history," I murmured. Dylan frowned. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," I said. "Thank you for telling me." When he left, I opened my secure drive. My own copies were still there, untouched, encrypted, safe, but his actions meant one thing. He was covering his tracks. That's when I knew the inevitable was coming. 2 days later, HR summoned me to a strategic alignment session. Pauline Harris, our HR director, waited in the conference room with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ethan sat beside her, fingers drumming on the table. "Margaret," Pauline began, "we appreciate your years of service, but Orion is entering a new phase. Your position as chief architect has become redundant." I looked at the termination paper in front of me. The words blurred for a moment. Then I looked at Ethan. "You've made your choice," I said softly. He tilted his head. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" I smiled faintly. "Be careful what you delete, Ethan. Some systems remember everything." His smile froze. Pauline blinked, confused. I signed the paper, stood up, and walked out. My steps echoed down the glass hallway, each one lighter than the last. When I got home that night, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. The consulting contract from 2009 sat in my personal archive, exactly where I'd left it. Section 17C, paragraph 3. All proprietary architecture remains the property of the developer until purchased outright. And Section 29. In the event of termination, the system license must be renewed within 30 days or revert to evaluation mode. It wasn't vengeance, it was math. That Friday, I called Hannah Blake, my old tech lawyer. I hadn't spoken to her in years. "Hannah," I said, "remember that contract you helped me draft 15 years ago?" "I never forget my best work," she said. "Why?" "Because it's about to become relevant." There was silence, then a small laugh. "You sound calm. Too calm." "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just finished letting people rewrite my code." We talked for an hour, reviewing every clause, every condition. Hannah confirmed what I already knew. The license was airtight. When I hung up, I sat quietly in the dark, watching the reflection of city lights dance across the glass. The hum of my refrigerator filled the silence, steady and predictable like Halcyon's heartbeat, counting down to Saturday morning. I didn't plan revenge. I simply stopped intervening, and for the first time in 15 years, I slept soundly. Would you like me to continue to Part 4, Conflict Escalation, Segment 1 to 1,000 words? Part 4. Conflict Escalation, Segment 1 to 1,000 words. The Monday after my termination, Orion's glass tower looked smaller from the street. Funny how perspective changes once you're outside the bubble. I walked past the lobby just long enough to see my name already removed from the employee directory. A clean erase. Inside, they were celebrating. Someone posted a photo on LinkedIn. Ethan shaking hands with the CEO under the caption, "A new era begins at Orion Data Systems." My phone buzzed with messages from old colleagues. "Sorry, Maggie. We didn't see it coming." I didn't answer any of them. I had nothing to say that wouldn't come out sharper than I intended. Instead, I drove to a diner near Lake Union, ordered black coffee, and opened my laptop. Halcyon's dashboard glowed like a pulse on the screen. Everything still functioning, each module pristine. In the corner, a small note flashed. License verification. Scheduled Saturday, 7:30 a.m. I stared at those numbers for a long time. That week unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. From my window, I could see the Orion building across the water, its lights burning late each night. Dylan texted once. They're pushing Aurora update this weekend. Ethan says it'll replace everything. Everything. He had no idea how literal that would become. By Wednesday, Ethan's tone on social media had shifted from visionary to smug. He was being interviewed by Tech Talk Weekly, taking full credit for the upcoming transformation. Legacy architecture, he said, belongs in museums, not modern enterprises. I almost laughed. On Thursday evening, a storm rolled through Seattle. Wind howled between buildings, the kind of noise that makes you feel both powerful and small. I poured another cup of coffee and checked my inbox. There it was, an email from Robert Kellen. Subject: What happened? The body was short. Maggie, I just heard. Please call me. I didn't. Some lessons need to arrive on their own. Friday night, Dylan showed up at my apartment building. He looked exhausted, hoodie soaked from the rain. I shouldn't be here, he said, voice low. But you need to know Ethan deleted the replication logs this morning. He's claiming Aurora was built from scratch. I motioned for him to sit. And you have proof? He nodded, pulling out a flash drive. Security cameras caught it. He didn't realize the servers record local terminal sessions. Keep it safe, I told him. And Dylan, whatever happens tomorrow, don't take sides. Just watch. He frowned. Maggie, what's going to happen tomorrow? Nothing that isn't already written in the code. He didn't understand, but he nodded anyway. Good kid. After he left, I opened the old garage photo on my phone, the one from 2009. Robert, me, and 2 engineers, smiling with takeout boxes on our laps. Back then, success meant surviving another month. We'd been naive, maybe, but honest. Now honesty was a liability. At midnight, I saved a final backup to my private cloud. Then I powered down the laptop and stood by the window. The city shimmered with rain, neon lights flickering in puddles. My heart should have been racing, but it wasn't. Everything felt strangely inevitable, as if the system and I shared the same quiet resolve. Saturday would decide the rest. The storm softened into a steady drizzle by dawn, a gray film over the city that made everything look like it belonged to yesterday. I woke before my alarm, muscle memory snapping me upright at 6. The kettle clicked. Coffee bloomed in the filter, sharp and bitter, and the sound of it felt louder than the rain. At 7 on the dot, Orion's lobby cameras would catch a parade of umbrellas. I imagined it as I buttered dry toast. Interns in squeaky sneakers, managers on their phones, Ethan arriving 5 minutes late for drama, then insisting he was early. I breathed in through my nose, slow and even, and opened my laptop. Halcyon's admin panel filled the screen. It always greeted me the same way, with a simple status line in the corner. License. Verification. Scheduled Saturday, 7:30 a.m. I watched seconds slide off the clock, like flakes of paint. At 7, my phone lit up. Robert again. I still didn't answer. A voice message landed a minute later, then another. By 7:15, my screen crawled with missed calls. Somewhere across the lake, Ethan assembled his team in the war room. The big one, with too much glass and a whiteboard so polished you could read your own disappointment in it. Dylan texted. Everyone's here. Aurora deploy in 10. Breathe, I told myself. Then I typed 2 lines in a note I kept for moments when the past reached up and grabbed my ankle. You built something that remembers. Let it remember. At 7:29, I stood and stretched. The drizzle turned to rain again, heavier this time, the kind that pushes pedestrians under awnings and makes cabs scarce. A gull screeched. Somewhere in the building, a neighbor's blender whirred like a migraine. At 7:31, the first alert popped on my screen. Aurora engine initialized. Halcyon compat layer bypass requested by user. E-word. Then the heartbeat I knew by sound alone. License verification routine started. Verification token. Expired. Grace window. Elapsed. A second line. Evaluation mode engaged. It wasn't dramatic. No fireworks. Just a quiet rearrangement of the world. Service modules slipped into restricted states, the way a careful hand extinguishes candles in a church. One by one, respectful and absolute. Extraction paused. Query orchestration grayed out. Visualization endpoints showed a thin blue banner. License validation failed. Please contact your system administrator. From Orion's side, the chorus began. My phone pulsed with a vibration pattern I'd set years ago for internal Sev 1 alerts, then another, then continuous. I set it face down on the table and watched the rain. A call forced through. Unknown number. No thanks. Then a name I knew. Dylan. I picked up. It's everything, he said without hello. Dashboards, reports, pipelines. Client calls are exploding. What's Ethan doing? Blaming Halcyon. Says legacy dependencies failed to resolve. He wants to wipe persistent stores and rebuild. If he does that, he'll lose audit trails. He knows. He knows. Silence breathed between us, heavy with the obvious. He had deleted the logs that might contradict his birth story for Aurora. Now he wanted to erase the rest. Hold your ground, I said. Don't touch a thing without written instruction. If he tells you to run a destructive script, email him for confirmation. Then save it. Maggie. Dylan. They'll ask if you did this. What do I say? Say the truth. You don't know. He swallowed on the line. Okay. The call ended. My apartment returned to its domestic hum. The fridge cycling, footsteps in the hall, the city carrying on like the sky wasn't falling in a single office tower. At 7:45, Robert finally reached me. His voice jumped the second I answered, raw and 10 years older. Maggie, are you seeing this? Our clients are locked out. What happened? License verification, I said. The system is doing exactly what it was designed to do when a valid license is absent. He exhaled, half laugh, half groan. Can we talk, you and I, privately? You had a decade to talk. I deserve that, he said. But I'm asking now, please. Not yet. Get your people safe. Don't let anyone run destructive resets. And Robert, stop Ethan from wiping the boxes. I hung up before he could bargain. I made another coffee. I barely sipped. By 8, the press had noticed. Tech Talk posted a headline about a major outage at a top analytics firm. The comments bloomed with schadenfreude. I closed the tab and opened my contract instead, finger tracing the old language as if it were Braille. Section 17C. Section 29. Nothing had changed but the weather. At 8:30, Dylan called again, breathless. He wants the team to migrate to a fresh cluster and abandon the current state. He says we'll rebuild from Aurora's schema. He says Halcyon is the problem. Tell him the problem is governance, I said. Then email him. CC Robert. Phrase it like a question. Are you authorizing destruction of regulated data stores without a verified chain of custody? That'll get me fired. You already work in a building on fire. Ask for a fire alarm, not a promotion. He laughed once, short and desperate. Okay. I'll send it. I waited with the calm that comes when your choices are spent, and the only movement left is consequence. The rain stuttered on the glass, longer pauses between drops, as if the weather, too, had exhausted itself. 9 o'clock. A different number blinked. The CEO. I let it die. A minute later, a board assistant. Then the general counsel. I considered answering, decided not to, picked up anyway when the phone lit with one name, Hannah. Status, she said. As expected, I said. They're trying to pin it on technical failure. Ethan's pushing for destructive changes. I'll send a letter to the board and council right now, she said. 2 paragraphs. One on the license, one on spoliation, if they wipe anything. Also, if they accuse you of sabotage. I'll politely remind them that a contractual failsafe is not a crime. It's due diligence. Thank you. You're steady, she said. I like steady. I set the phone down with a thumb that trembled only after the call ended. Then I walked to the sink, turned on the tap, and watched water run until it went from cold to colder. Small rituals help. Make the coffee, rinse the mug, wipe the counter, while the men in suits hyperventilate, put your house in order. At 9:30, I got the text I was waiting for, from a number I didn't recognize, but the phrasing was unmistakable. Maggie, we're convening the board at 10. Please join the call. Robert. I typed back. Send me an invite. I'll listen. 10 minutes later, Dylan sent a different kind of message. A still frame from a security camera. Ethan at a terminal. Time-stamped. His hands on a keyboard. A black prompt with white letters. The command that clears logs without recycle. The kind of command you only run if the story you want needs a different set of facts. I saved the image to 3 places and closed the thread. 9:59. I clicked the board link and muted my mic. Faces flooded the grid. Robert's jaw tight. The CEO. Pale. The general counsel. voice too bright. And Ethan in a square that seemed to have its own spotlight. The hero of a movie only he believed he was in. "We're at Sev 1, the CEO began. "Clients are threatening breach penalties. We need solutions." Ethan leaned forward, hands steepled. "The legacy core failed during our modernization routine. The cleanest path forward is to rebuild from Aurora and deprecate the old system immediately." General Counsel nodded as if he understood any of it. "And the timing? Unfortunate," Ethan said smoothly, "but it's exposed the risks we've been warning about. The old system is brittle. Maggie's design." He stopped when Robert lifted a hand. "Ethan," he said quietly, "did you delete replication logs yesterday morning?" Ethan blinked. "No." Robert's eyes slid off screen for a second as someone messaged him. He looked back, voice flatter. "We have security footage." Ethan's jaw made a small, involuntary twitch. "Maintenance cleanup." "Irrelevant." The counsel cut in. "Let's stay focused on restoration and liability mitigation." I unmuted. My voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. "You cannot rebuild from Aurora without a valid license for Halcyon. Aurora is a fork, not a genesis. If you wipe stores, you'll destroy your own audit trail and invite sanctions you can't afford." Every face turned. The room went so quiet I could hear someone's dog barking 2 houses away through a board member's open window. "Maggie," the CEO said, very carefully. "Are you saying this outage is a licensing matter?" "I am saying," I said, "that the system is acting in accordance with the contract you signed and the code I wrote. The license expired when you terminated the architect without renewing. Evaluation mode engaged when verification failed. This is not sabotage. It is a predictable behavior you could have avoided by honoring the agreement." The counsel cleared his throat, suddenly hoarse. "Do you have a proposed path to restoration?" "That depends," I said, "on whether you intend to restore the truth along with the system." Ethan forced a laugh. "This is extortion." "No," I said. "This is memory." Robert rubbed his temple. "Maggie, what do you need to bring us back online?" I looked at the rain. I looked at the clock. I looked at the image Dylan had sent, tucked safe where no one could reach it. "We're not at that part yet," I said. "Not until you stop pretending. The problem is the past. The problem is erasure." The CEO exhaled through his nose, slow. "We'll reconvene in 30 minutes, he said. "No destructive actions. Ethan, stand down. Robert, get me the contract. Counsel, prepare options." The call ended. My screen reflected my face back at me, older than I felt inside, calmer than I deserved to be. I closed the laptop. The rain had thinned to mist, the kind that hangs in the air like unasked questions. Somewhere in the tower across the water, an elevator chimed. Somewhere, a junior engineer took his first deep breath in hours. Somewhere, Ethan looked at a clock and understood what time it really was. I poured out the cold coffee, rinsed the mug, and set it on the rack. The apartment was quiet enough that I could hear the tick of the old wall clock I never remembered winding. I sat down. I placed my hands flat on the table. The system would speak again in the next hour. I would, too. By 10:30, Seattle's skyline looked bruised clouds dragging low, a metallic light turning everything the color of code before dawn. I sat at my table, listening to the city breathe through rain and sirens. Somewhere across the lake, Orion's war room pulsed with panic. When the board reconvened, the energy had changed. The polite corporate tone was gone, replaced by the raw sound of people watching millions evaporate. Robert's voice broke through first. "We've confirmed it. The contract is valid. Maggie owns the license to Halcyon's architecture. The system didn't fail. It did exactly what it was designed to do." I unmuted. "That's correct." Ethan tried to cut in. "This is ridiculous. She's manipulating us." "Stop!" Robert's voice cracked like a whip. "You lied about Aurora's independence, deleted logs, and compromised client data. You don't get to call her manipulative." For the first time, Ethan's mask slipped. His face flushed, a vein rising near his temple. "You can't prove that." Robert clicked something off screen. "Dylan, share it." Dylan's hesitant voice came through. Yes, sir." Then the footage appeared grainy but clear enough. Ethan at a terminal, 6:42 a.m. Friday. Fingers hammering keys. A command window. The unmistakable line of text. RM, RF, divided by logs divided by replica, asterisk, a long, suffocating silence. You could hear breathing through microphones. Robert leaned forward. Explain this. Ethan swallowed. That was maintenance. I was cleaning. No, I said quietly. You were deleting your own fingerprints. The words hung there like frost. The CEO finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. We need to fix this. Maggie, what would it take to restore full functionality? I folded my hands. Reinstate the license and clear payment for unlicensed use. Once the system recognizes the transaction, the evaluation lock will lift automatically. Cost? The CFO asked. $1.5 million in back payment, I said evenly. And one condition. Ethan barked a laugh. Here we go. I ignored him. Ethan Ward will sign a written acknowledgement that Halcyon was built under my intellectual property agreement, and that his Aurora engine was derived from it without authorization. That statement will be witnessed by the board and archived internally. Robert didn't blink. Done. Ethan stared at him. You can't. I just did, Robert said. Extortion. Ethan spat again. I looked directly into the camera. Extortion is when you take something that isn't yours and threaten someone with it. I'm simply reclaiming what already belongs to me. The CEO exhaled. You'll have payment within the hour. I'll send the validation key once the transfer clears. I replied. While legal finalized the documents, the board went silent except for the sound of muted phones and tapping keyboards. Ethan fidgeted, glancing off camera. I wondered if he was thinking about how quickly the hero of his own story had become the villain in everyone else's. A private message popped up from Dylan. You okay? I typed back. Better than I should be. When the CFO confirmed the wire, I attached a small file to the chat. License, key, Halcyon, V15, DAT. The system would recognize it instantly. Applied, Dylan said a moment later. Verification green across all nodes. The dashboards began lighting up and sequence data flowing back, connections snapping into place like vertebrae realigning. One by one, client systems came back online. A collective exhale rippled through the call. Ethan sank back in his chair, color draining from his face. He looked like a man realizing the credits were rolling and he wasn't in the final frame. Maggie, Robert said, voice steadier now. The board has also voted unanimously to terminate Ethan Ward's employment, effective immediately. Ethan shot up. You can't fire me for this. You knew about that contract. Robert's tone was ice. I knew about it, yes. I also knew you were too arrogant to read it. Security entered the background of Ethan's feed, a quiet, humiliating choreography. He froze for a moment, then leaned toward the camera. His voice dropped low, venom wrapped in a smile. You think this makes you a hero? You'll always be a relic, Maggie. You built a system that can't survive without you. I let the silence stretch before answering. That's where you're wrong. I built a system that remembers. Then I ended the call. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. Only relief, a strange, heavy calm settling over me like fog on the bay. Robert called back 10 minutes later. The apology letter's drafted. It'll go out company-wide first thing Monday. Publicly, we'll call it a restructuring miscommunication. But internally, everyone will know what you did. I sipped my now cold coffee. It's enough. I mean it, Maggie, he said softly. You saved this company from itself. No, Robert. I just let it meet itself. When I hung up, I sat there for a long time, watching the rain ease into mist. Across the water, Orion's windows flickered back to life, each floor lighting in sequence until the whole tower glowed again. I should have felt vindicated, maybe even proud. But all I could think about were the people inside, the young developers like Dylan, the ones who'd stayed through the chaos, who'd learned the right lesson from this. On my screen, Halcyon's status indicator blinked green. License verified. Operational. I whispered, welcome back, old friend. Then, for the first time in months, I closed my laptop not to shut the world out, but to let it back in. Outside, the city was waking, and somewhere deep within Orion's servers, a quiet line of code logged the moment. Ownership recognized. I smiled. Just once cold, small, and final. Because justice didn't need noise. It only needed precision. By Monday morning, Orion's headquarters gleamed again under a washed blue sky, the kind that only comes after days of relentless rain. I stood across the street with a paper cup of coffee in my hands, watching employees stream inside, unaware that the entire building had nearly collapsed 48 hours earlier. I wasn't there to gloat. I just wanted to see the machine I'd built still breathing. At 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. An email from the board. Effective immediately, Margaret Ellison is reinstated as Consulting Director for System Integrity and Architecture Preservation. Beneath the formal tone was the subtext I understood all too well. We need you to clean up the mess. I took a slow sip, the coffee bitter but satisfying. They would expect me to restore the order Ethan had tried to burn down, to patch holes he'd left in his wake. And I would. But not for them. For the system. For the code that had carried my fingerprints for 15 years. I walked into the lobby just before noon. Heads turned. Conversations paused. The same people who'd watched me walk out in silence 3 days earlier now nodded, murmured, smiled too quickly. Guilt is an excellent teacher. Pauline from HR handed me a sealed envelope. From the board, she said, eyes flicking to the floor. Inside was the formal apology, typed, stamped, signed by every executive. We recognize the invaluable contributions of Miss Ellison, regret the oversight, extend our gratitude for her integrity and professionalism. A corporate hymn of repentance. I folded it neatly and tucked it into my bag without a word. At my temporary office, a small glass room, 2 floors below my old one, I set down my laptop and booted up Halcyon. The dashboard hummed, smooth and alive. The system logs still bore the entry from Saturday. License validation complete. But deeper in the code, hidden beneath layers only I could navigate, sat a new line I'd written Sunday night while the city slept. If unauthorized, modification, detected, trigger, audit, log, notify, owner memory, sequence, active. Not revenge, not sabotage, just a quiet guardian, a whisper in the system reminding the future to respect the past. Ethan had been wrong. The architecture didn't need me to survive. It only needed to remember the truth of who built it. I leaned back, watching the pulse of the system flow across the screen. It was steady, loyal. They thought they had destroyed me, but all they'd done was hand me the one weapon I needed: time. If you've ever been pushed aside by people who called your loyalty outdated, remember this truth has its own clock. It may run quiet, but it never stops ticking. I'm Margaret Ellison, and this story isn't about revenge. It's about recognition. About making sure the system you built never forgets your name. Because sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't bringing others down. It's standing tall when the dust settles, knowing the foundation still bears your signature. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family or your own workplace, subscribe. This story isn't over.